if you're ready to go fast, here's what we need to do. You need to invest in storytelling. You need to have the paid media. You need to have the pre, during, and post media strategy. You need to cultivate your talent community. You need to show up big at the event. You can't be like the little wrinkled tablecloth in the corner. You need to have the marquee,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Get your leaders there and get them engaged. This is not just a diversity attraction thing we're going to solve. I mean, the business needs to be there.
All right, folks, we have employer branding royalty amongst us today. I dare call her the queen of employer branding. Friend of mine who has guided me through some of the toughest challenges in this work, talked me off several ledges and talked me onto a few I probably shouldn't have been on. But I am overly excited to have a friend and a mentor and a luminary in this space, Charlotte Marshall. Sharmar, welcome to Employer Branding Unfiltered.
So happy to be here. So good to see
Yes.
you.
Likewise, likewise. So I could start with our history, but we have been traversing this space for several years, and you even preceding me. And it's been awesome to watch what you do, because wherever you go to do this, you do it big, and you do it in a way that sets speed. So I would love for you to just introduce yourself, what your background in this space, and what you're currently working on.
Well, I'm Charlotte Marshall. I am an employer brand leader at my 7th gig. I've been at 7 Fortune 500 companies, most of which no one's ever heard of, sort of helping them put themselves on the map, win more than their fair share of top talent, and really learning and improvising as I go. Because I've learned and improvised so much as I've gone, I've been really passionate about trying to educate and teach and share what I've learned to help propel the field forward. So in 2020, co-authored a best-selling book on employer brand called The Give and Get, which I'm so proud to see at so many companies around the world now, whether they've worked with me or not, really embracing more authenticity into how we share what it feels like to work within our walls, and not being so scared to talk about what makes us difficult. Even the days of bragging about why we're a great place to work kind of coming to a head, and leaning more into finding those really great matches. And I'm currently working for Intuitives, which is an amazing company. I'm their director of people, brand, and diversity attraction. I just inherited the diversity attraction team a couple weeks ago, which is super exciting to have people brand owning diversity recruitment.
That's huge. And awesome to hear, because I mean, I think you and I talked about this when I made the move from internal into the consulting world, that I saw DE&I and employer brand merging, right? It was inevitable. So it's awesome to see that you have now inherited that work, because what better place could it be than the people who are tasked with articulating the culture to the world? So that's dope. Wow, that's a lot too. A lot of work.
But I like to measure everything and try to show what's working and what's not. So I'm excited to go on the journey and maybe help make a business case for more of us being able to have this function in our realm.
I love it. I love it. So look, the 7th rodeo. I think you've built more brands than any other employer brander I know. And I think you also have a record in the employer branding space, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of the fastest employer brand ever built. Tell us about that.
Okay, so let's go back to 2017. I was getting over my fear of public speaking, and I was on a stage breaking out in hives, talking about the case study at Thermo Fisher Scientific. And I loved the results that work generated, but the constant criticism I got was, well, how big was your team? How much time did you have? How much budget did you have? Well, I don't have that. So people almost just discredited the achievements of the work because of that. And I was like, you know what? I know that that's not the reason why this work was successful, but yes, I did have $1 million. And yes, it did take 18 months. And yes, we did do all of those things. So when I sought my next opportunity, I wanted to go somewhere that had all the ingredients for a great employer brand: purposeful work, bought-in leadership, all of the things. But I wanted to be a little bit resource constrained. I wanted to be scrappy, and I wanted to show that you could move with pace. Because one of the things that I learned, well, yes, 18 months is nice. It actually hurts you because the relevancy, the market has moved on so quickly, and all of your research is a little bit stale by the time it goes to market. I thought we should be moving faster. And is there a way that you can? Found out 100 days for under $100,000, you can also build a world-class employer brand that moves the needle pretty significantly for a Fortune 500 company. So that's what we did at Magellan Health.
That's unreal. I can't imagine what those 100 days must have looked and felt like, getting all of the things required for a world-class employer brand launch. That is
It's John
insanity.
in 78 days, but 100 had a better ring to it when I was titling the keynote. So we did 100 days, but it was 78. I do think the organization has to be a certain size to be agile enough.
Sure.
This was
Yeah.
like a 10,000 person organization, not a 120,000 person organization. But
Yeah, I was about to say there had to be like some universal star alignments, perfect weather conditions, absolutely, for that to happen. At a massive multinational, severely bureaucratic and highly regulated company, probably not.
it was heavily regulated. It was a healthcare organization. But here's the thing: the chief people officer invested in the position, invested in the function, and loved the
Okay.
fact that she could tell the board and the C-suite, I'm going to have something for you in
Yep.
100 days. So she helped drive and really knock down some of the decisions and some of the
Yeah.
committees that have to sign off on the work, because that was her favorite bit. So when we talk about stakeholder management and how to get buy-in, it can often be the thing that gets you where you need to go if you can show the tangible results within a short time.
Yeah. And we are definitely going to touch on that, because that is a hot topic amongst our function for sure, is not only buy-in, but education of executive leadership around what we do. But before I do that, I have to ask you the question that every guest answers. And first and foremost, when did you fall in love with employer branding?
Oh my gosh. 2013.
Okay.
After meeting Herman Atkins. So I was working at a biotech company in San Diego, and our chief people officer, Dr. Pete Letty, challenged me and my team. I was on the internal comms team at the time. He said, if you can raise employee engagement 7 points by the next engagement survey, I'll fly you and your team anywhere you want around the world. And, I was young. I was not married. I didn't family. All I wanted was to work at a global company that would like pay for me to go to Australia, or, one of those like wild trips. So we started going on this storytelling adventure, and I ended up finding people that were personally benefited from our products. But I ended up meeting Herman Atkins, and he had been wrongfully accused of a crime. He spent 11 years in Folsom Prison. And at the time of his confinement, DNA analysis did not exist. The company I worked for created a lot of the products that were used to analyze DNA in cases like that. He ended up writing the Innocence Project in New York, asking them for years and years to look at his evidence. And once our product became available, it showed that he actually was innocent. And the marketing team kind of knew about him, but they never told anybody, because they said, Charlotte, like, we own 80% of the market, but we don't actually know if it was our thing that was used in his thing. So I called the Innocence Project in New York, and then they said, well, this is the lab that did it. I said, can you send me the case file? And they sent me the case file. And then I saw the product name, the AB Profiler Plus, which was one of our products. And I said, I got to find this man, and brought him in to speak at an all-employee meeting. And the company was kind of going through an economic winter. And our CEO used to always start every single meeting with a joke. And he was kind of known for that. And that meeting he didn't. And I didn't even know that that was coming. And he's like, there's nothing funny about where we are right now. We're in an economic winter. If we don't pull it together, we might not survive as a company. Well, Herman was backstage, and he heard all of this. And he came out on stage, and he told the story of what it felt like to have his mother look him in the eyes and not believe he was innocent, what it felt like to be rotting in prison for 11 years for a crime you didn't commit, and how important the life-saving work of everybody in that room was to giving him back his future. Fast forward, he was 2 months away from graduating from law school, dedicating his life to helping other people who were on like just all the feels in the world. And then I had found
Unreal.
the guy that created the thing and flew him out, and he didn't know why he was there, and had them meet on stage. And I put that into a recruitment campaign, and every quarter I would find another story. The next quarter, it was a woman whose baby was ripped out of her arms in Guatemala and was taken into child trafficking. And
Oh
then
my gosh.
when she got her baby back, the government didn't believe that it was hers. So they had to use the DNA analysis to prove like it's actually my kid. And I just fell in love with the storytelling, the stories that people care about, that move people to join our companies and remind them why to stay. They kind of live with us. I found the marketing team sometimes don't take the step to like call the lab and find out if it was really our story, or go through some of the hoops that it takes to tell the story. But once you find them and you give voice to them, you're all in. I was all in.
Oh my gosh. God, I just fell in love with employer branding all over again listening to that. That is that is golden. And I think so many of us don't. First of all, the level of investigative journalism and research that you put into, into the human storytelling, right? Like it's easy to just put somebody in front of a camera and say, speak, tell people who you are and what you do. But to connect the product to real human stories in that way that then translates into an employer branding goldmine, like that's why you are who you are. So thank you for sharing that. God, and so once you did that and you saw the impact, you knew immediately you're like, get me out of internal comms, create a role, I don't care, but that's the jumping
I
off point.
transitioned over around that time before employer brand was even really a position. I didn't know anyone else doing the work, but I
Right.
immediately said yes because A, it came with budget. Internal comms comes with like $0. It's measurable. So I could get more budget and I could make a head count. I was like, I can measure my campaigns and the recruitment dollars and all of this stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
um, we all bring a different bias and strength to employer branding depending on what our background is. Mine is this like red thread of the whole employee experience. It's not just ending at onboarding. It's not just top of the funnel, getting people interested and excited about a company they might not have heard of. This like intentionality to like reminding people why to stay, which is why I love the structure of my new team. I'm on the people experience team. So I sit alongside all of our inclusion and diversity staff and all of our internal comms staff and people, brand, and diversity attraction. We're all one team. So it's so
Oh my
cohesive.
gosh.
Our storytelling and the ability to promote and weave and share stories, and it's really coming together.
Yeah, I think you've achieved the equivalent of employer branding Avengers. Like you have literally the perfect balance from all angles to communicate all of the value of what you do. And I love the measurable aspect as well, because to your point, there's far too much, how do I say, squishiness in the measurability of
The squish,
branding.
the squish exists. And a lot of our stakeholders just don't even understand the metrics that we're using. I think we've got to come up with something universally that everyone just gets without needing to know marketing, right?
Yeah, yeah. I would love to figure out how. I mean, you can measure it in sentiment and resonance and recall and all of those things, but at the same time, brand is very much a feeling. The outcome is recall and affinity, and you know, do you love the brand, or do you remember it when you see it, or what are the thoughts you have when you see it? But at the same time, it's our function sort of gets lumped into recruiting outcomes, right? If you sit in HR,
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts on that? I mean, we can just go right there because does it sit within for your function? Does it sit within the HR space, or is it more on the comm side or marketing side?
Yeah. We're in the HR space And honestly, I have fallen wherever the passion and the pockets are for the work in all the different places that I've worked. It has typically been HR, and I actually quite like being in HR, but I have a
Yeah.
strong partnership with our brand and creative team,
Hmm.
and I think that's really required from a storytelling and investment perspective. Because if you don't sit in marketing, the investments, the same way there's disconnect between the internal employee experience, there can be disconnect with your story and your marketing and all leveraging those budgets efficiently.
Sure. Yeah.
But when you're an unknown brand, there has to be as
Hmm.
much emphasis and measurement on, are you growing awareness, which is not a bottom of the funnel thing. And
Hmm.
even looking at our diversity attraction events that we're now in part of my organization, some the outcomes are different. Like the goals for some should be just building awareness amongst certain communities. Other ones, it should be direct hires. We were at NSN last week, and we're so
Yeah.
proud to get 15 offers on the spot accepted, and even more trickling in this week. That one is really a bottom of the funnel conversion.
That's huge.
And I look at how many new users and return users hit my website every month, how many people are looking at my LinkedIn page, and I'm tracking that and I'm sharing that with my leadership team on a quarterly basis. And
That's
then the
gold.
hiring stuff I don't love. I like applications and conversion for talent community signups. So that's really where I focus my conversion. 30% of my career site traffic converts every month, which is insane.
That's unheard of.
It's insane. But
30%.
a job apply or a talent community sign up, because talent community sign up's top of the funnel and that's value. And then I'm tracking you and I'm nurturing you.
That's right.
And
You've
that job
you've
apply,
given me a pardon. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
oh, go.
I was just gonna say they've given you permission to engage in a relationship at this point, right? Like the moment you give me your email, you've told me you want to talk. So now I
Yeah.
have to have something to say. Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people so many companies I see, just the fall off right there. Well, they're in our CRM, but we don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
What? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're just not
Okay.
staffed on a lot of our talent acquisition teams to
No.
cultivate talent communities and to qualify talent communities. I was talking to some of my leaders the other day. I was like, we need to create a role that just qualifies the talent community. And then you
About
get that
that.
qualified pool, and then the recruiters and the sourcers can then tap those
Hmm.
candidates for opportunities or invite them to our next event. We're going to be in your neighborhood. Please come and see us. I'm
Hmm.
interviewing for an open role on my team right now, and I've been talking to some really interesting people. It's a diversity attraction senior manager.
Hmm.
And I've been learning from the best of the best. Like, what do you do and how do you do it? And one of the candidates I interviewed with was actually able to track it down to any candidate that comes to one of our events is 10% more likely to accept an opportunity on our team enterprise wide than anyone else coming in any other channel. I was like,
Whoa. that
that's the
I,
power of brand. That's the power of events and community and what we're here to do. They finally
that's
figured
right.
out how to measure it.
That's right. Oh my gosh, that's huge. I used when I used to go to conferences on behalf of the organizations I worked for in the employer brand function. I set the expectation that coming out of this, we're not going in to get hires. The ROI in this case is relationships on investment, and if especially when we're talking about attracting or engaging, uh, you know, talent from diverse communities or communities that are historically underestimated, you can't approach that transactionally, right? We don't respond to transactional. We see through that. We want to know that you see us, hear us, care, and that you're interested in more than just your interest, right?
Yeah.
And if you're interesting, cool, but we have to know that this isn't just a transactional um, engagement because there's too much history in that regard. So
That was
I
one
love.
of the key reasons we pulled diversity recruiting out of TA, because TA is measured on bottom of the funnel metrics. Diversity
Highly
recruitment should not
transactional.
be, right? It's a
That's right.
completely different goal, and it fits more naturally with our inclusion and diversity team, our people brand team, how we're looking at growing interest and awareness and building relationships for the long term. It's not a short term play.
That so nail on the head. How have you? Because I know you've had to do this in multiple instances, but how do you communicate that to the executive leader who wants we need to hire X amount by yesterday, apply employer branding to it, right? How are you educating in those moments where their expectations are misaligned from the get-go?
I luckily have not been in that situation in my current employer, but Intuitive has
No,
done
yeah.
things a little bit differently. We have not set representation goals. So there isn't that behavior being driven for like, you need to hire X amount by, we're striving for 100% diverse slates. We're looking at where we have opportunity and we're trying to build more and increase applications and hires in certain areas, which drives a little bit nicer environment for what we're here to
Mm-hmm.
do. But I
That's
think
right.
if I were getting that conversation, we'd have to go back to the basics. We'd have to look at the story and the data and show this is what the company looks like today, and here's where we're going. Here's what the
Yeah.
total addressable market looks like. Here's the current perceptions. Here's what your leadership team looks like today. This is how we're showing up in the candidate experience.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what, if you want to be more successful, here's some things we could do. So, like, we were at NSN last week. We did some things that we had never done before. And
Okay.
I would probably walk through some of those tactical strategic plays that we made that put some bigger numbers on the board. All of our VPs showed up, every single one. And they were committed and they were focused and they were engaged. They were doing interviews till like 7 p.m. at night.
Oh,
We
wow.
created videos of some of my superstar talent that we text messaged to candidates the day before their interview and right after they met with us. So it was like this personal touch.
Love that.
We did a ton of video storytelling in a way that we've never done before. But then I found all the hires we made last year at NSN. We interviewed them and we put them on all of our branding with stories and quotes and videos. So when they came to, pass the baton and recruit new talent, they were in tears taking pictures of their signs, sending it to their mom, saying like, oh my God, like to see yourself in that way and
Mm.
to feel like you've joined a company. And then they brought all of that forward into their interview. So candidates could feel it. Like they could feel what it felt like to be here, which is what we want to do. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, if you're ready to go fast, here's what we need to do. You need to invest in storytelling. You need to have the paid media. You need to have the pre, during, and post media strategy. You need to cultivate your talent community. You need to show up big at the event. You can't be like the little wrinkled tablecloth in the corner. You need to have the marquee,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Get your leaders there and get them engaged. This is not just a diversity attraction thing we're going to solve. I mean, the business needs to be there. And when they show up, when all those things happen, man, it was some magic.
I mean, it sounds tremendous. Like you created this alumni experience almost for those who found their opportunity with Intuitive at NSN, coming back to now create an experience for those seeking their next opportunity. And that, I think the thread there is creating experiences. And I don't know, I haven't seen too many experiences created lately from the employer branding I'm seeing, right? Like I think that's that's an art that is highly under utilized versus the content strategy. Like, okay, cool. But how do you make people feel something in the moment in real time? And
Yeah.
that's where I think the true value of this work is those experiential activations too. That's dope.
That's
That's awesome.
a cool insight. Yeah.
Very much so. No, I mean you're living it, you're doing it. So there's the there's the representation side of it. I still find, I mean, I still find that there are misuses of words like EVP and employer brand and recruitment marketing, and sort of the conflating of those three
Yeah.
very distinct things being utilized or being spoken about as one thing. And I hear it from executive leaders who say, "Oh, we need an EVP, and then we need to activate it or launch it." And I'm like, "Well, you don't launch the EVP. you develop it, and then you create the brand around that, and then you activate your brand, and then the expectation is, well, how many hires did we get from this brand activation? Well, that's more of a long-term play, as you said. So I still find that there's that. And look, let's be honest, there's no like college curriculum for this work, right? Most of us, I don't want to say fell into it, but our transferable skills made us perfect for this work. And then the role was defined around that. Um, I don't know. I think that education is still a strong need in this
It
space. What do you
still
think?
is. And fingers crossed, I'm going to be invited in to start guest lecturing at a pretty impressive school in California. I'm working on it when they're back from summer break
Love it. Love
because
it.
we have to get in the college classroom.
It should have been a curriculum by now. As critical for business as this is, it's not a part of any B school requirements for MBA. There's no HR, you know, curricula for it. Like, so you're getting people who just happen to be good at storytelling and making business cases that sort of get put into this work. It's
Yeah,
wild to
and
me.
you learn about it too late to make a career decision around it, right? I mean, you don't
That's
even know what
right.
you want to do when you grow up, but you're never even exposed to it. It doesn't come up
Mm-hmm.
in your, if you're in an HR management class or you're in a communications class or journalism or whatever,
That's right.
right?
That's right. Absolutely. So I want to shift gears a little bit here. We are in a very interesting market for talent right now. There's a lot of swirling. I don't want to say disasters, but there's a lot of things going on geopolitically, economically. You know, businesses are being more conservative with spend. Hiring is slowing down. People are staying in their roles longer because it's not as advantageous to hop for the, increased salaries like it was 2 or 3 years ago. How do you how do you employer brand in the midst of all of that, right? Considering all of those factors that can either shape, the narrative of a company depending on their commitments to DEI being rolled back, or they're
Yeah,
laying off 30% of their organization. What
yeah.
advice and perspective do you give to people in our position who
Well,
have
it's an
to?
election year, so hang on. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
The election years are always super interesting, but a little bit less risk adverse because we can just count on certain things not totally falling during that time. So
Yeah.
I just give people a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of encouragement to just things aren't maybe as bad as they could be if it was another year. But the open role I have on my team as of this morning has 908 applicants for it,
Oh
which
my
is
gosh.
insane. And it's
That's,
the market is very soft for talent acquisition, for I&D, for employer brand.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I think about this all the time. Like, I wouldn't even get hired for the jobs that I'm recruiting for. Like, the competition is
Right.
so good. So you have to be slick. You've got to start building your personal brand. I mean, you talk about personal brand better than anyone I've ever met.
Oh, thank you.
Investing in your personal brand,
Yep.
getting over the imposter syndrome, right? None of us feel like we know what we're doing, but we're putting
Right.
ourselves out there and we're sharing what we're learning. And through that, you build a bit of a personal brand, and that will get you like a little bit more of a leg up than the next person. The other
Mm.
thing is to really diversify your skills. So, yes, hiring is slowing down, but retention and re recruitment in a down market is incredibly valuable. Make sure you're always owning and doing some sort of internal engagement work and measure it so that you can shift your focus. People don't have money to backfill. And if people, the economy, the second that it heats back up, everyone's worried about people leaving and taking other jobs. So that's one of the things that I always advise people to do. Never be just external hiring focused.
Yeah. No, that's really good advice. And I think for anybody who's listening, if you're in the market in our space and seeking opportunities, I mean, you really have to. It has to be more than a resume, right? It has to be, a personal and professional brand that showcases impact in your space. Be a thought leader. Take a point of view. Have a point of view. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the end all be all, but it has to be unique.
Yeah.
So, it has to be with, a convicted point of view there.
Some of
No,
the
that's,
things that stood out for me right now, just being a
yeah.
hiring manager, I had an SVP of talent acquisition write me an 8 paragraph letter of endorsement on LinkedIn saying, meet your next diversity attraction senior manager. this person
Whoa.
worked for me for 3 years and here's everything that they did. Pretty
What?
cool. I had
That's
another
phenomenal.
candidate to start responding to everything I post on LinkedIn. And then I looked
Hmm.
at their LinkedIn and they have the most engagement I have ever seen on anything on LinkedIn in my life in our space. And I was like, I don't know if I would have seen your resume otherwise. And then the thank you note this candidate sent was a digital thank you note, reinforcing the points that she heard during our conversation, data examples for how she hit all of those points, and then like just this amazing creativity and like people are doing stuff that's just
Damn.
slick.
That's that's awesome to hear because I'm like, wow.
Step your game up, Mr.
What,
Graham.
straight up, like I need to go back to, I need to get hungry again. This is nuts. Digital thank you notes with data points and SVPs writing long endorsement letters. This is I think it speaks to how competitive the market is, number one. Um but interestingly enough, the people that are hiring for these roles, like yourself, or if I was hiring for this role, we have a very clear and distinct idea of what it takes to do well in this work. You know, like we're not looking for somebody who just, you know, who's on Instagram a lot, so I think I could do employer branding. This ain't that. Like you have to have a level of acumen with this work because of not only who's seeing it, but who you are responsible to daily, which is every employee in this organization, right? It's not
Yeah.
just the CHROs and the CEOs. It's like the brand touches everybody. So you have to carry that. Like,
This blend of strategy and the ability to roll up your sleeves and actually do the work in a somewhat ambiguous environment has been consistent everywhere I've gone. So, someone who
absolutely.
can make a decision based on imperfect information or not
Hmm.
100% buy in, influence and motivate people to come on the journey with us. That relationship building is so critical.
Hmm.
Like the ability to articulate, like, I set a strategy that was X, here's what I did, and here's what it resulted in. If you can say that in 3 sentences, you will get our attention all day long.
That's it. It's a pitch. Be quick, be concise, be compelling, then be gone. Like just drop the mic and roll out. Like leave it all there. Yeah, yeah, that's really good advice. I mean, you have to be able to articulate what you've done in your approach to doing it. And that's, I think that's table stakes. And then how do you do that elegantly? Right? How do you do it so that it leaves an impression, and out of the 900 so candidates who are vying for that one spot, it's the ones who, you know, injected a bit of elegance and nuance into how they articulated the same things. That's a standout.
And be
I think that
careful with
works in every role.
GPT. I know everybody is loving Chat GPT, but the Chat GPT thank you notes and all that, people see it. They can tell it maybe wasn't written by a human. So just be careful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you don't have a voice, if you haven't figured out or found your writing voice, GPT is a horrible tool for you. It's gonna ruin you. So you definitely have to know where to add that layer of humanity into what GPT. It's nice, but it easily stands out to people who know good writers and good writing. Speaking of writing, being that you have literally co-authored the employer branding Bible, as it were, you it still astounds me how many times I'll be on a call with maybe an existing client or prospective client, and I hear, you know, we're really looking for our give and get, and I'm like, oh, I know where you got that from. I know where you've read the book, haven't you? They're like, yes, I love. I said, yeah, she's amazing. They're amazing. So talk to me about that. What has life like been? What has life been like after authoring this and putting your perspective, honestly, your point of view on this work out into the world for, you know, to be lauded and critiqued, but ultimately to move the industry forward? How has that changed things for you?
Everything. Like, I never thought, I always wanted to write a book, but I never thought I could or that I would. And it was a 2 year process. It took a lot longer and it was a lot harder than I thought. But I fundamentally believe everybody has that kind of book in them, right? It's not a New York Times bestseller. It's not trying to be everybody's summer beach read. But for those of us in the field, we're all tri-storming every day, and we're all learning on the job, and we're all doing something that can benefit from somebody else. So when something's striking you as so odd, when your leaders are calling you every day going, oh my God, Charlotte, and this was my experience, I'm drowning with unqualified applicants in our ATS. Nobody knew us 5 minutes ago. Now we've seduced the candidates with the sizzle of our bespoke coffee and our ping pong tables or whatever it was at the time. How can we get through this? I'm like, there has to be a better way. Why has nobody else figured out this better way? Who can I talk to? Who can I call? Who can I, try to figure this out with? And at the time when the book came out, Brian and I spent so much time coaching C-suites on how to be brave enough, right? That your brand is not for everybody. Now, 2024, I mean, my CEO, it kind of like warms my heart all the time. He's like, just as Charlotte says, and giving it, he'll like drop it in a meeting sometimes. I'm like, you actually know who I am and the name of the book that I wrote. But like C-suite love it. Like we were so scared to get people to like lean into saying something that might be controversial or revealing a part of our culture that made us difficult. I don't see that. Like the market has moved on in a way where it's like, can you please help us like find the right people, because we're losing too much to new hire turnover, or we're losing too much to this, or we have too many unqualified applicants coming in the funnel. And seeing Give and Get being a tool that people can deploy on their own, with or without an agency, with or without a me, working in their organizations, just giving that framework to the world. It never gets old. Like I'm so proud of it, and I love to see it, and I'm glad it's useful, and I want to come up with the next thing every day.
Absolutely. Look, you've taught a lot of folks how to fish with that. And, I often find myself referencing, compel the few and repel the many. It's probably one of the most brilliant, straightforward ethoses to what this work should do, right? Like that says it all. And I also think one thing that you just touched on in this notion of fear around being transparent. And I've often said that transparency is the new authenticity. That it's going to take more than just emotional heartstring pulling content. People want to know who you really are. What am I going to experience on a day to day that you might not want to put at the forefront, but I'm going to find out anyway, and it's actually going to shape my experience more than all of the fluff.
Yeah.
And so what do you think it'll take for organizations to get to that point of comfort, being transparent in who they are and standing tall in their flaws, while giving way to the aspiration of where they want to go and what it's going to take to get there?
I mean, one interesting exercise to go through, if you're new in role or you're building your employer brand with your team, it's like, okay, what's the current culture? What are the supporting behaviors? What are the challenging behaviors that show up on a good day, a bad day, even an average day? But then like, where's the business going? And which of these behaviors are going to help us accelerate, get there, and which ones are going to hold us back? Because then the strategy becomes quite different, right? Like you can hire for people with more of the skills that you need to move the business where it needs to go. You can do the internal campaigns to deploy to try to galvanize and celebrate the behaviors you want more of, encourage people to leave some of the behaviors behind. That's slower work. But I actually think employer brand is this deeper culture strategy that we should be partnering on with our leaders on a pretty regular basis. I'm so lucky at Intuitive when we built our employer brand and I had the listening session, I reflected back, hey, this is the part of working here that's kind of tough. And my CEO was like, hey, just to be really clear, like those aren't up for changing. Like we don't want to change those things. We like those things about us. I was like, oh, I'm not suggesting we change them. We're going to lean into them pretty heavily in our marketing so that people know this is what's required. This is what you have to give to get ahead at Intuitive, but here's what you get in return. And I think that's the moment, like he fell in love with employer branding because he's like, oh, you're not asking. He's probably been told for years, these are things that are tough. You don't have to create a perfect culture. You have to find people that are okay working in that culture because they like what's on offer. And that's like not a deal breaker for them. For some people it is. And that's who you want to find. And that's such a fun conversation to have.
Yeah. Yeah. it's a new conversation. To your point, I'm sure everybody's painted this picture of you have to get to utopia,
Yeah,
which
no.
is impossible. You're never going to please everybody, no matter how good the execution of whatever culture you were trying to do is. And I think I would love your take on this, like this, this balance between for the people who run towards whatever your culture is, packaging that, messaging that in a way that doesn't oversell a false narrative. I think that's
Yeah.
like the really fine line we have to walk, right? Like,
And it's like really mid-funnel content, right? So when you're trying to
mm,
grab attention and build awareness of your brand, you're not leading with that, right? Like you're leading with whatever's going to build some affinity with your brand so that people can get curious to lean in more. But like that
mm-hmm,
mid-funnel at the consideration point,
mm-hmm,
the long form blog or the video is your best friend and your employees being your hero of the story. But to your point, those stories are never, and we all lived happily ever after. We're leaning intentionally into the adversity of like, what's the hardest part of this? Like, how did you almost not make it? Or how did this launch almost not happen? Or why was this so
mm-hmm,
important to get right? And like talking about that struggle so that the candidate sees themselves in the shoes of the employee. So it's not the brand talking and it's not the corporate voice. It's like literally one story at a time, one employee at a time. And I mean, I've been at Intuitive for 2 years now. If you look at our careers blog, those stories are told from every geography, every job family, every nationality and demographic. So we build a library over time, and then we just learn how to insert those into our talent communities, into our conversations with candidates, and like use them at the right time. It's like matchmaking the story then with the candidate, right?
mm-hmm.
You take some time to build that library. And if you find a good writer, I mean, my number one position you have to have on your team is a human writer. I've got probably the best in the biz.
Hey,
Our dwell time on our blogs is like 3.5, 4.5 minutes, 90% scroll depth, proving that people still read. Candidates that want to know, like, is this the place for me? If you are open enough to tell them what
mm.
it's like, they'll read it. They'll read it.
Whoa, whoa, and you hear, folks, she always ties back to the measures. She can tell you the impact of this work. You have to be able to recall that like quick, because that's all.
Well,
That's all. That's all leaders
studying
care
And
about.
I'm studying it monthly, right? I'm not just putting out the blogs and then saying, okay, we did our job. Which ones converted? Which ones didn't convert? Which ones didn't get good read time? Why? Was it
Yeah,
a Q&A? Was it a narrative? What about that story was so compelling versus that one?
yeah,
Which
yeah.
pages are converting? You gotta, producing it is not enough.
That's the easy part, right? Figuring out, was it impactful? Did it connect with your audience? Did it do what you wanted it to do? If not, why not? Should we invest in more content like that if it's really working? Or maybe this works better with these job families, to your point, or in this geography. Like
Yeah.
there's so much that can be gleaned to make this work even better and make your
Yeah.
investment smarter to showcase that you're actually delivering results. So
My little aha
crucial.
this week, I was talking to some of my leaders this morning. We're
Mhm.
putting emojis in all of our Facebook ads because guess what? Costs went down 50% when we put emojis in our Facebook ads.
It's like the littlest things. It's like you wouldn't know.
Colors, study images, study emojis, all of it.
100%. 100%. To that point, now, content and the proliferation of content, versus 10 years ago, uh, it's night and day where you can pump out so much content now. But I think it's, there's a saturation of sameness at this point. What are you seeing as ways to differentiate when let's be honest, everybody's saying the same story,
Yeah.
everybody's saying the same things, and it's very hard to differentiate even at an EVP level because just to be honest, most companies are the same across sectors, across company size. You have to find those needles in the haystack to find differentiation. How are you approaching differentiation to not get lost in the sea of sameness?
I love this question. And I think we
Mm,
touched on it a little bit earlier when you like anchored in on the experience.
mm,
So people
mm-hmm,
feel 10 times faster than we think. So yes, you can have purposeful work at Intuitive, and you can also have purposeful work at all of our competitors. But what stories can I tell that make you feel like this place is different? So one of the things that we did this year is, and I think most of the employees, if not all the employees at Intuitive, have this like deep felt connection to the work. We make surgical robots that you can have an 8-hour surgery and go home and cook dinner the same night, not even take an Advil because you're no longer being cut open. That's the Cliff Notes version of the technology. And the
Wow.
employees are really, really proud of not only making that technology, but also seeing the impact it makes on patients. So as I acclimated myself to the company, employee after employee, like the last part of an interview, be like, oh, by the way, Da Vinci saved my dad's life, or I'm a Da Vinci surgery patient. So we've done a video series called More Than a Job, and we're just chatting with people about how the technology personally benefited them. We launched a new product earlier this year. It's cool. It's my first time being part of a company during a product launch. So I was starting to
Oh,
experiment with
wow.
how does employer brand support product launch.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
picture a new robot, brand new to market, 10 years of innovation to create. We went around and we interviewed every single role that touched the robot, from the designer, the engineer, the assembly, the manufacturing, the shippers who were putting it in a box. And then we did a whole career site takeover. It all
Mm.
looked like the product launch, but then you could click in on different parts and you could meet. And then there was a landing page for every single team that documented this is what it feels like. And the people putting that robot in the box will make you cry. That's how much
Yeah.
emotion goes into that storytelling. And I think that's how you differentiate. You find who's got real belief in what you are doing and why they are there, and you just give them a mic,
Mm.
you know, and it's your job to kind of put it out there in some new and novel ways. And we were able to partner with the brand and creative team. So like they're pushing products, benefits, features on social media pretty robustly throughout the launch, but they're not telling the people side of the story. So my team was able to come and say, oh, by the way, I've got 5 videos for every single team. So why don't we put this in the social calendar? So you're doing product one day, and then I'm doing the person who built that product the next day. And it's all working together in harmony. So this like universal cohesive storytelling from the corporate marketing side along with the people marketing was like, I
Yeah.
haven't seen a lot of people do that. We had actually never even had any shots where we had people and the technology in the same thing in our employer brands. It was the first time. We either had technology or people, but never together. So it's kind of
Interesting.
fun to build out new campaigns that didn't break brand rules, but let us put people that weren't surgeons near the consoles.
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. And I found myself in the rabbit hole of that content in prep for this conversation. I was just fascinated by the people. Like the product, absolutely get it completely, but their relationship to the product, whether it
Yeah.
was personal in a surgery that they had, but getting to know their family life, their origin stories, the adversities that they faced, getting to where they are today, how they got into career, like all of these things certainly painted a more human picture to a technology, right, which has the impact on humanity. So I love the approach that you took there, and that is, I think that's something that I would love to see more of out there, especially when we know the production costs aren't cheap. In fact, that's gone up over the years, and what you're fighting for in terms of the attention economy. Like you only get a few seconds, so if you don't pull people in with something that's a great exchange for their time and attention, then what are we doing this for, right? What are we doing this for? Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's also, I think, a really good point on. We're talking about differentiation. What about the internal activation and that connection for the existing employees? So, of course, the people that you're putting in front of the camera have a connection to the brand, and they want to, amplify it once the content's out. But what about regular come and do my job, I go home? How do I get them on the side of amplification or ambassadorship?
You have to ask. I mean, the first thing you have to do is you have to ask. And Intuitive has been easier than other places that I've worked. I feel like the current company was they're just like so passionate about what they were doing. They're like, please put me in, coach. No one's ever given a structural way to do this. And they were kind of scared to go out on social media and do anything. But we did some unique activations that I think were helpful. So instead of rolling out the employer brand with an all employee email where you're like, okay, there's this new brand and here's where you learn about the pillars, all those things, it just feels like a lot of heavy lifting and work to learn what it is, understand how to use it, what it means to you. We just asked people to take a moment to nominate one of their coworkers and appreciate what they bring to work every day. And I created this digital experience where you could go in, and yes, we had 4 pillars, but I didn't tell people there were 4 pillars. It's like, here's the story about like what makes Intuitive a unique and special place to work. Take a moment and nominate. All will be revealed soon. And we launched it on a Friday. I think on Monday morning, we had 550 nominations of people just celebrating. And we call it the Wall of Thanks, the Intuitive Wall of Thanks. And it was a digital projection. So as you walked through the offices, and there was digital projections as well online that were in our internal comms, you were just seeing messages of like why people were being recognized for the 4 things that we think make us a unique and different place to work. Then maybe like a month or 2 later, I came up with a quiz. So under each of those pillars, there's a variety of attributes, right? Thank you for all the things that you bring to Intuitive every day. Find out your unique combination of skills that make us who you are. And then it generated, you can go to my LinkedIn, you can see it pinned at the top.
I did.
I mean, employees were all like, oh my God, that's so you. I want to take the quiz and I want to see what mine are. And then it developed a set of icons. What I can do with those icons now to like put them into pins or to connect people that have the same personality. Think about like a Myers-Briggs or a Strengths-Finders, right?
Absolutely.
You all of these things to just like show where the commonality is, but then also what makes us different, makes us unique. It takes all these different combinations to make us a place we're so proud of. You can do low cost things like that just galvanize culture and remind people, like hang a mirror in front of their face. Thank you for being you and for what you do every day. Yeah. And it never gets old. Dude. Something like that just never gets old. People love thanking each other and feeling appreciated.
Oh, that's the ultimate right there. The recognition, the validation, the showing that you're valued, not just valuable.
And I think like as EB leaders, we should be championing that across all of our stakeholders and finding ways to weave those moments into our activations, because it feels really good. And it's often the lowest cost tactic out there, and we kind of forget about it.
That is, I think, first of all, that kudos to you for creating that experience to bring the everyday employee into the brand. I've recently been saying a lot, I don't believe your brand is a brand until people can touch it. And creating these experiences where I love the pin idea. So once you figured out who you are within the pillars, assigning that or aligning your identity to that, and then seeing, oh, hey, I see you're also a, and then, you can do like lunches and networking events and, bring your pin, and that's the admission. There's so many things that you can do that create community out of that. And I think for you to see that, it highlights again, this role is like also equal part sociologist and psychologist, and what motivates people to take action, and how can we create spectacle to get people to stop and then feel something. Like that is the best part of this work in my mind.
Yes, the feeling part.
Yeah, feel your way through it. That's gold. Look, I think I could talk to you for hours, as you well know, but I want to be mindful of your time, and I also want to have you back. So I won't go 2 hours today with you, but I will move us into sort of our closing segment where you answer a question and you leave a question. So you'll answer a question that was provided to you by our last guest, and then after you answer that, you'll leave one for our next guest. So if you're ready. The question that was provided by our last guest is, what aspects of AI are you afraid will replace your job?
Oh. Like literally none of it at my level. Mm-hmm. I'm not, well, I can say my copywriter is nervous about it. My
Okay.
SEO team is worried about it. Um, I have my own chatbot.
Mm-hmm.
I've been at the forefront of leveraging and using and really embracing AI, and I just find it so helpful um, to speed up the limited resources that we have. But I'm not
Mm-hmm.
scared of it replacing an employer brand leader, not yet. But maybe
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know enough. Maybe I should be afraid.
No, I think you make a very good distinction, right? It's the tool can only replace you if you're not the one using the tool, right? Like if you have not figured out how to leverage the tool to enhance what you do, not to do what you do,
Right.
then yeah, you're in jeopardy of being replaced for sure. Um, and I, like you, have been knee deep in this stuff, leveraging it as a complement to or an enhancement or an efficiency finder for some of the things that would take me days just in thought and you know bouncing ideas and all that. Now I can just do that and refine the idea. But to your point, there's a certain level where you can't replace the humanity required to do this work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you ever want to ask me questions and you can't get me, you can go to my chatbot. Give and Get has a chat GPT.
What?
So it's pretty
Oh,
amazing. You can
we're
ask
gonna
Charlotte
link that. Yeah.
anything that you want on chat GPT on the Give and Get chatbot, and it can help you shortcut some of your employer brand questions.
Yes, we will have that link readily available for anybody who wants to go and have a conversation with Charlotte via her AI. that's that's brilliant, by the way. Fantastic. Okay, so now, what question will you leave for our next guest?
Okay, next guest. My question is, in this resource constrained environment, if you were gifted the gift of one new headcount, what would you pick and why?
Okay, okay, okay. I had to think about that. I'm thinking about that one myself. Like, gosh,
Mm-hmm.
if you were gifted one new headcount, what would you hire them for and why?
Yeah. What would you
It's a
add to
good
your team?
question. That's a good question because resources are not becoming more abundant these days,
Mm-hmm.
especially headcount. So they're asking us to do a lot more with a lot less. That's a great question. I can't wait to hear what our next guest has to say about that. And on that note, Charlotte Marshall, this brings us to our close. But I thank you so much for the time. It is always a pleasure to talk to you, and I learned so much from you every time we talk. Um, and I'm excited again. Like you constantly keep me thinking. So thank you for being a guest and sharing your time and wisdom with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Always, always. And we hope to see you again next time on Employer Branding Unfiltered. Take care and be safe, my friend.